Financial analyst Max Keiser is here to comment on this week's news with us. But first, the highlights from around the world, starting with a surprise drop in U.S. jobless figures, which has fueled hopes that the economic recovery is gaining ground. And President Barack Obama commented on this just a few hours ago in the United States. But first, let's take a look at how the week in business turned up. Hopefully we'll have that report for you very, very soon. But let me turn to you right now, Max. Is this a sign finally that we're heading towards light again?
No, you have to scratch the surface and look beneath the top line figure to really get at the truth here. In the United States, for example, they don't count people who have stopped looking for work. The wages per hour is going down. The loss of jobs are manufacturing jobs, and if you add all that together, you find that the unemployment rate is actually increasing, wages are going down, and the economy is actually continuing to decline. So this is very common in the U.S. They use statistical mumbo-jumbo to hide the reality, and it's very disingenuous. But the federal government likes to put out these false numbers in the hopes that maybe somebody out there in the world will continue to buy U.S. Treasury bonds, which they're having a tough time selling right now, given the explosion in debt in America. So I don't think the sugar high of this fake economic number is going to last for more than a few days.
All right, before we continue, Max, let's take a look at this week's business highlights. All right, we're here with independent financial analyst Max Keiser. Max, what was the highlight for you this week in business?
Oh, I think it had to have been Lloyd Blankfein's wife, who was shopping in the Hamptons. She is the wife of CEO of Goldman Sachs.
Right.
And there were people in the store who wanted to make purchases, but she told them to go away because she had to do her shopping first. And after all, she's shopping with their money.
Right.
Because, you know, Goldman Sachs was bailed out with taxpayer money. So here's Lloyd Blankfein's wife basically treating American public like serfs, treating them like slaves on the American economic plantation, and that was the highlight of the week for me.
All right, well, let's talk about jobs again, and that was certainly the word on everyone's lips this week. Again, we saw that in the United States, it's slightly better, but you say it's still very depressing?
It's only better if you are looking into the wrong side of the telescope. If you're willing to be deluded by these government numbers, the U.S. government publishes fake numbers. And they do this because they try to, as your package suggested, if you can get people confident, then they'll go out and they'll spend lots of money and go deeper into debt. But unfortunately, the U.S. economy is now so in debt that they can't hide the reality any longer. And this jobs picture is only getting worse because underneath the surface of these top-line numbers, wages are decreasing, the manufacturing jobs are being lost, and statistically they use the birth-death model to cook up these numbers, which is that they figure out that supposedly there are new companies hiring people, and then they apply a statistical number to this, and it's all basically fabricated. It's all part of this U.S. government statistical soup of lies and deception.
So how long do you think then it'll take for companies to start hiring again?
It's going to be probably 36 months at the minimum. We have to yet see the second stage of the banking collapse, which is going to hit us in the second half of this year. There's going to be a whole nother round of bailouts. By some estimates, another $15 to $20 trillion is needed to cover up a lot of the bad bets that were made on Wall Street. And remember, Hank Paulson at the end of last year put a gun to Congress's head and said, either give us $700 billion or we're going to blow the market up. And of course, Congress said, okay, here's $700 billion, and that soon became $13 trillion. So it's the biggest bank heist in history, with Paulson, former CEO of Goldman Sachs, and this gang of cronies at Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan.
Well, these better than expected unemployment figures from the United States have put a smile on European markets. This Friday, the European shares closed higher, reversing earlier losses. Now, overall, it was a quite good week on the global stock markets, though.
Yes, but the money going into stock markets not coming out of money market funds. funds is coming directly out of the government coffers, and they're using that to launder these bailout schemes that they've been able to extort from the government. Once prices move up to the point where they can wash the funds, then the support disappears and the market will crash again. It's pure money laundering on these big markets around the world.
Well, let's talk about specifically about France and the CAC 40. If we could take a look at the evolution of the CAC 40 in the last year, how do you see it continuing? I mean, are we going to see green? Keep seeing green?
Well, these European markets are beholden to the New York Stock Exchange and what's happening on Wall Street. They're not independent in that sense. The European Central Bank is in the pocket of the Fed, and the Fed is in the pocket of the Bank of International Settlements. Mm-hmm. So to the extent that they want to keep this charade going, they will fabricate a so-called rally. But how can you have a rally if the underlying economy is still weakening? The true jobs number and the true wage figure mm-hmm. is still weakening.
Right.
So you can't, and the manufacturing sector is weakening, except for one sector in America. The only true bright spot in the American industrial landscape is the military contracting business. As long as America keeps invading countries and killing innocent civilians, you're going to see the Dow Jones reflect that genocide, and you'll see other markets around the world in lockstep.
Well, what about the emerging markets then? China's stocks, for instance, have risen almost 90% since the start of the year, regaining much of the lost ground over the past 12 months. So does this mean that the Chinese investors know something that their European counterparts don't, and the American counterparts?
The Chinese investors, the smart ones, are using a lot of these gains to buy copper, zinc, and gold. Right. Because when the second leg of this market the crash gets serious, they want to have as much copper, zinc, and gold as possible, especially as a hedge against their U.S. dollar positions, which the leadership in China has said publicly they're afraid that the U.S. dollar could very well be worthless in the next 12 to 24 months, as I suspect it will be.
All right. Here in France, meanwhile, the controversy over bank bonuses escalated this week, with French President Nicolas Sarkozy calling on banks to disclose their bonus policies. Concerns were highlighted again as banks published their latest results, with many posting solid profits. BNP Paribas, for example, put €1 billion aside for potential bonus payments. Now, Max, despite promises of an overhaul of the financial system, it seems that the rules haven't really changed, have they?
Well, no, not at all. They've only gotten worse. Barack Obama is a huge disappointment. Right. He's only given through his cronies, Geithner, for example, the Treasury, and Bernanke.
President Sarkozy?
Sarkozy, I think he's starstruck, and he likes the idea of going to Washington and rubbing elbows with Hollywood celebrities. As a statesman and a financier, I give him a grade F. And as long as he's getting his picture on various magazine covers, he'll do whatever the central banks tell him to do. I don't think he's independent in any stretch of the imagination.
And concerns over lack of transparency at banks here in France, and another scandal brewing at Société Générale. What do you make of this?
Oh, there's going to be plenty more scandals because, let me explain something to you. The banks have only started to disclose the trillions and trillions of dollars worth of toxic debts. What they're trying to do right now is to put as many of these toxic debts into the publicly owned banks like Northern Rock in the UK, and who just announced tripling of their toxic debts, before the true accounting takes place in the form of a dollar collapse, a dollar devaluation, a reconfiguration of the global currency market probably later this year. At that time, those who own the most gold are going to be the only ones left standing in this economy. If you own stocks at that point, you're going to be holding lots and lots of worthless paper. All
right. Quickly, when do you see the recovery finally happening? The recovery that we've been promised now for the last year.
If you're talking about gold bullion, and agricultural commodities, and the emerging countries that are specialized in commodities, the recovery is happening right now.
Right.
If you really want to maximize your returns and you want to be in a country that still has potential to survive this financial holocaust, you might consider Brazil, which has great agricultural commodities and pretty sound management in terms of the leadership there.
Right. All right, Max. Unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you very much for being on the program. Max Keiser, independent financial analyst, of course, commenting with us this week's business headlines.